Hey, so if there's anything you've learned about the state of our education system in the United States from watching social media, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, is that your kids can't read. Talking about Gen Alpha and younger Zoomers, you can see plenty of videos of teachers talking about how kids are not reading at the level they're supposed to be reading at. Well, I have some news for you. Not only can they not read, but they can't do math. I don't think this is anything new, though, but there are some serious consequences to this. So I don't teach high school or middle school. I teach at a 2-year college. But what we've observed for years is that there is a class where students, they run up against a wall, and that class is college algebra. So without any studies, without any research, if you teach at a school where you're teaching college algebra, you know a large number of students have problems with this. But let me cite a source and not just anecdotal evidence. So there are plenty of sources, but one I'll reference is a paper published by the Mathematical Association of America called Common Vision. And in this, they found that roughly the pass rate for college students taking college algebra for the first time is about 42 to 58%. So the high estimate is that 58% of your students are failing college algebra the first time they take it. Now, the course being called college algebra is a little bit of a misnomer, because if you live in a country in, I believe, Europe and maybe parts of Asia, what they call college algebra is something entirely different than what we call it in the United States. In these other countries, what they call college algebra is what we would call advanced algebra or abstract algebra, which looks nothing like the algebra you would have taken in high school. However, and this is a much more advanced class that it's mostly taken by math majors, and occasionally computer science and physics majors will take this class. So even if you go into a STEM field, STEM being science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, you may never take what other countries call college algebra or advanced mathematics. But what we call college algebra in the United States, so college algebra is a 1-semester course, and honestly, it's just what you've learned in high school. So traditionally in high school, you have algebra 1 and 2, and what college algebra does is it gets the harder portion, you say the later portions of algebra 1 and 2, the less preparatory elements of those classes, and it condenses it into a 1-semester course. So, and the approach is a little bit more abstract, but if students are successful in successful in algebra 1 and 2, they should know all the material in college algebra. This is not the case. So why is this an issue? Because, well, it is a barrier of entry into more advanced math classes. If you are going into a science engineering field, you're going to be required to take eventually calculus. So, for example, let's say that you're a chemistry major, you may have to take the sequence of calculus 1 and 2. If you're a computer science major, you're going to have to take calculus 1 and 2, possibly 3, but eventually something called discrete mathematics. These classes may be required for your computer science classes, and for some of your other science classes, you have to take calculus 1, and in some cases, they'll let you take them at the same time. The way the sequence works is you take college algebra, then you take a class called pre-calculus, which covers elements of algebra as well as trigonometry, and then you take calculus. And what's happening is students are getting stuck in college algebra and can't move beyond that to take their later courses. And what ends up happening to a lot of students is they change majors. Some of them just drop out. So you have students who are basically dropping out or changing majors because they can't get through the math sequence. I just had something pop up on my screen. I'm going to keep going. So What I think is happening here that students in high school are being passed along, and by the time they get to college, they think they have a greater understanding of mathematics than they actually do. And it's kind of a wake up call to them. There's analysis of why this is occurring, and a lot of schools are taking steps with varying degrees of success. Um, Dozens of schools have implemented programs. Dozens of colleges and universities have implemented programs. A popular one is what we call support classes. Some states, they've done away with their remedial courses, prepping people for college algebra, and instead they've opted for doing support classes. This is an additional class that usually counts for about an hour. It's basically, think of it like additional classroom time for students who I'll say qualify for it, but let's say don't perform well enough in evaluations to not take it. The success of this really isn't that great. Some other steps that have been taken is to offer maybe other courses students can take besides college algebra. Already for non-STEM majors, a lot of colleges give the option of taking an alternative math class, which is less abstract and deals with more applications. I'm actually in support of this. I teach a course like this. It's quantitative reasoning is what we refer to it as. And I actually like this because there's some topics that are covered in this course, such as voting theory, constructing arguments, basic probability and statistics that will be more useful to students who aren't going into a hard science field. Personally, I think that the biggest reason students are underperforming in college algebra, we can say in high school that you have lack of funding for schools, teachers that aren't properly motivated, teachers that don't have the right experience or background to teach mathematics. But I think often by the time students get to the college level, they will have a lot of the resources they wouldn't have in high school. But the thing that they may be lacking is, how to put this, the understanding of how to be successful in the class. They've gone through 13 years where they were able to kind of play around and think that that would be sufficient to success, not pay attention in class. Some of them don't really even know how to take notes effectively. I've seen it where I've looked at students' notebooks, and they are in class taking notes, but their notes are disorganized and missing the important points. Other students will do things. They'll come to class, but, well, I'll say this. They're easily distracted. On more than one occasion, I've had students who will have their devices open, and they will be watching videos, playing on like TikTok. I've even had students, that's a common occurrence, but I've even had students watching Netflix movies in class, out in the open. I don't quite understand this because attendance really isn't mandatory. There is a penalty for not coming to class, but it's small. If you're going to be there, pay attention, but they don't. And it's because they believe that they actually understand the material, or they just don't care. But every semester we have to get together, we being other instructors and administration, and we have to figure out what can we do to improve student outcome. I think it just comes down to this. When I was doing my PhD, about the third week of my first semester, I went and spoke to a professor who had at this point in his career, he had almost just over 40 years of teaching at the higher level, teaching at a university. And I asked him, can you give me any advice on being successful, how to succeed in a PhD program? You know, he's sitting there and he says, well, people do different things. They'll come up with flashcards. They'll record the lectures. And he named several other things, but he says at the end of the day, what you have to do is just sit down with a piece of paper, a pencil, and just work through the problems. And I think that that is something that is largely lacking from students. We can sit here and say, let's put money at the problem. Let's give them extra instruction. Let's get more involvement with the parents. Have more tutors. But if the students aren't willing to sit there with a piece of paper and pencil and just work through the problems on their own, they're not going to learn this stuff. They're not going to know what questions to ask in and outside of class. And ultimately, they're not going to pass. And I think that's what we're seeing.